page down for me. Okay. Says there under 5.5, as far as the Corvette program is concerned, Mr. Sheikh informs us that the question of the sharing of responsibilities between the program various players is the object of fundamental differences between his team. Captain J. Kammerman, spelled incorrectly, plus C. Howell and himself. The setting up announced by ADS, Mr. Pierre-Moineau, of a local suppliers consortium, including ADS, is not in any case a solution that will be able to bring the necessary performance guarantee to this program, which, taking the challenge, and that is, I think, the price, 1.2 gigarand, less than 2 gigarand, to account, may only be provided by a private contractor having the necessary resources and experience. Anyway, what I think they say at the end before the signature is, we think NCS France must speedily contact Mr. C. Sheikh in consultation with the delegation. Now, whether or not this is in the context of recusal, I don't think that the MODAC procedure would allow for this kind of thing with the Chief of Acquisitions. Okay, there are other pages, but I don't even think they're necessarily even relevant to that particular record.
Right, next you deal with the other example of these communications between Sheikh and officials of Thompson CSF you have already dealt with in RMY 69, your DT 10344. But you continue then at paragraph 370 to say he was also directly engaging with the head of Thompson CSF, NCS Alex Doraine, as well as ADS CEO Pierre Moineau, and in that regard you refer to your RMY 71, or at least our RMY 71 at page 1366, your DT 10445, and your DTI 0360, our RMY 72. Both these documents appear as from page 1366, that is RMY 71, and RMY 72 is at 1368. Let's start with the first.
Okay, these are further examples, maybe to slightly contradict the JRT's conclusion that this was no recusal at all. Unfortunately, that's not quite the case. There was a recusal, there was a reason for recusal, but these documents prove that despite the so-called recorded recusal, that Chippy Sheikh did indeed, in the relevant time period, engage directly with ADS and Thompson.
Could you just briefly describe what RMY 71 deals with?
I hope I've got the right document. It's a very bad copy, but I can see a date at the top. This is where it's got a 094 as the evidence document, and underneath that, quite far, there's a date and place, Pretoria, 26th of the 5th of 99. If we remember from a couple of days ago, that was precisely the date 2 days after ADS submitted its best and final offer, and that date of the 26th was 2 days later when there were deep negotiations between ADS and the Department of Defense regarding the best and final offer and reduction of the price to the expected amount. But this letter is written by Alex Dorian, who I actually happened to meet once, not when he was working for Thompson, but strangely for BAE Systems not long before that. It's a redacted document, but nevertheless, you can see right at the top, It was formally supplied to me, I think, under PIRE, and that is why it has been redacted, and that's also why it has been provided to me. Well, it's been desensitized by Lieutenant Colonel P.H.J. Duval. But anyway, it's on a Thompson letterhead, and it's addressed to the Director of Acquisition of the Secretariat of Defence for the attention of Mr. Chippy Sheikh, spelled wrongly, and it's in respect of the Corvette Combat Suite, and it's in respect of further to the joint offer of Thompson CSF, NCS ADS, that you will have received on Monday, as I was saying, 24th. We'd like to comment. Anyway, this document goes to offer a completely different combat suite. It offers something, a different surface-to-surface. It offers a different tracker. It offers a different communication segment. It offers a different surface-to-air missile. So anyway, that's also proof of a complete divergence of, at least from the French side, of conforming to the South African local combat suite. But most importantly, it's directed to Mr. Chippy Sheikh. And if if he'd recused himself, one certainly wouldn't expect that. And I do know under recusal, for state of recusal, you're not really meant to be in possession or of any documents relating whatsoever to the matter.
The next document you refer to?
Relevant. I received it as a annexure to one of the transcripts, section 28 transcripts. It's indicated here as, you can see two things, or at least mine, HNM4. That was the fourth document referred to in the interview under oath with Captain, Naval Captain Nick Murray. He did not provide to me. It was formally provided to me. I can see it seems to have also been a document. It's got scratched out here, but it's got JEGK, so it might indicate that it was also referred to in Captain Commerman's interview under oath. But nevertheless, it is a document signed by the project executive, that's Captain J.E.G. Commerman himself, as the project officer of Project Citron, and the word underneath their manager is actually a mistake, because it should have come with Arms Corps Program Manager on the right-hand side, Mr. F. Fritz Norkier. And it's dated the 2nd of March 99, which is, as far as I can work out, my arithmetic tells me 4 months after the recorded recusal. And it says there at the top that this is discussions between SAN, Arms Corps, GFC and ADS. I'm glad it refers to SAN, because I think it really means DOD. I've made that mistake as well, but nevertheless, SAN is part of the Ministry of Defence. But the I think probably only 2 points I want to address are what says Mr. Moineau. It's recorded as Mr. Moineau saying, he explained the background of a meeting with Mr. Chippy Sheikh and Admiral Howe on the 26th of February 99. He explained that Mr. Sheikh requested certain information regarding prices and alternatives. Now, in the simple...
you recall that in terms of the ruling that was made yesterday, you're not supposed to give any interpretation to the documents you have not authored. So having that, the terms of the ruling at the back of your mind, you can continue to give your evidence.
Okay. We'll go on to point 2 then. The project team indicated that the matter cannot be negotiated at 2 levels in parallel.
Now, in terms of the documents you have referred to, if one has regard to the contents of those documents, what do they demonstrate?
Well, I suppose that is an analysis and maybe a conclusion as well. But as you've invited me to do so, I will carry on do so until I get stopped. Clearly, they are documentary evidence that Chippy Shake was involved in this process after his recusal, that I think would be unlawful. It certainly is irregular, illicit in the terms of reference of this commission. The previous point which I mentioned is that negotiating the combat suite price and content in parallel, I'm pretty sure the meaning of that is that it was not done in accordance with MODAC. I don't think MODAC allows parallel negotiations of this nature. And the second thing is that the project executive knew of these violations, which in my view are fundamental, and yet nothing was done about it. So after, both Karmerman and Nokia were at the meeting of the 4th of December where the recusal was recorded in their presence. Here is a clear indication of a contravention in a very extremely material way.
Now, having dealt with that observation you make, you continue then in paragraph 372, where you say that on a perusal of various documents and minutes of the PCB, there appears to be clear evidence of pricing manipulation. Could you just take us through that?
I don't want to belabor the point, but I'll, because we've just traversed that in substantial detail in the last 2 days at least. But certainly there are, I think I've alluded a couple of times to the pricing, maybe we say pricing manipulations, manipulations probably being used in its broader sense, at least. But if we can say, just to, for clarity, pricing going upwards from 1.47 billion, 1.8 billion, 1.885 billion, 1.9 billion. That's in the 1998 time frame. Then we've just seen the previous document in the French presentation. They're recording it as 2.2 gigarand, at 2.2 billion. And believe me, those people, being Thompson, had a very, very, very good indication of the prices. So that would have been a relevant one. But of course, the first price that they put in after that was 3.9 billion, and it went down to 3.6 billion. I can't remember whether it went to 3.3 billion, went to 3 billion, 2.9, 2.7. Then it went down to 2.3, with an indication of it possibly coming down to 2.1 at least, which is pretty close to the French one of 2.2. But yet it suddenly jumps up at the last minute, and I've got documentary indications of that, I think at least in 2 instances, from Pierre Moineau as the CEO of ADS and effectively his boss, or at least his counterpart, Alan Tattard, of hurriedly changing their prices of 2.3 billion to up to 2.7 or 2.6. That's for me at least unexplained and inexplicable. The reason why it's unexplained is there don't seem to be any negotiations that took that price from 2.3 or 2 on its way down to 2.1, jumping up to 2.6 again. And of course, not only is unexplained, but it's also unexplicable. And certainly, and also of course, I'm not quite sure where the affordability report might have got that figure, unless of course it was from Chippy Shake. But anyway, it's a reasonable interpretation for me at least for the purposes of this type of inquiry, if you're jumping from 2,3 to 2,6, and there's no reason for that, is that that could have either been the bribery amount or funding part of it that I referred to as why we, being ADS, could be in big trouble if somebody in the ANC opening their big mouth.
You conclude that discussion by stating the following at the end of your paragraph 373, that the pricing manipulation gave Thompson CSF about 1.3 billion rand and ADS about 0.3 billion rand worth of contract value.
That's correct, yes.
That is a conclusion you arrive at after the analysis you've just made.
Yes, and without belaboring the point, I have tried to prove, I tried to make none of my assertions bald, if possible, and there's a document there which we can open. It is a document that was actually sent to us as well, so I have personal knowledge of it. It was sent to us sort of semi-formally or formally, but it has a price breakdown of that final price arrived at.
Is that your document 0505? And our RMY 73 for the record appearing at 1369.
Yes, that's correct. It's fairly self-obvious, but the total amounts have been divided into a platform part, part A, and a combat suite part, which is part B and C, and I don't want to go through all this. Hopefully that your copy has been copied in landscape mode and is legible, but the figures I have got add up to that 1.6 billion for Thompson and ADS together, and about 300 million for ADS itself. One thing I can see in this document is somewhere in the middle, just to the right of that, looks like crossed spears. We can see something there.
Is that the second page of that document you're referring to, our page 1370, with a number of blocks and arrows depicted there?
That is indeed correct. Just to the right-hand side of the crossed arrows, I can see the word SSM. And then the rest, the other word I actually cannot read, but it looks to me, at least in my version, of an amount of 182.257 million, and that is one of the tiny bits of information that have come my way where I try to analyze the SSM price. But if I'm correct in my, let's call it not an interpretation but an assumption, if this was the price, the final price for the surface missile, it doesn't accord with even the price of 390 million for the surface missile, including its 17 rounds and its on-ship launches. I think that's all I need to say on this document.
Having concluded then on the price manipulation, you say there are further observations on pricing that you deal with as from paragraph 374 through a document in your PDF files. It's 0607, and for our purposes it is RMY 74 at 1371.
Correct, yes. I think there's only one particular point I want to mention in this architecture. It is at point 13 on the second page of this document, but I have quoted it. Maybe I need to say for the context, is despite the so-called risk, which of course is price risk and business risk that's been alluded to, commercial risk, which of course was all about money, that even internally, and of course this document came to me later, legally, if I may say, can indicate a search and seizure number at the top, which said came out of the Shabir Sheikh trial. But anyway, as I've said there, despite ADS making so much noise about risk and costs and all of this inexplicable migration upwards of our price ended up at 89 million, which actually included the 12 million of the so-called IMS study. So we're talking about of that, let's say not the 89 million, because that included the risk study at 12, but 10 million they talk about. So I've now lost my place except for the document, so I'll go to the document. But it says here, basically what is the implication of the change of the baseline architecture, being the bus architecture. ADS was now exposed to an additional cost of plus or minus 10 million. PM, I think that project, PM will know to discuss with in NCS. So, you know, these costs, and of course the risk of costs, don't only apply to C squared R squared, but to and I thought that was quite ironic.
Through the aid of your DTI 0475, our RMY 75, for purposes of the record, appears at 1393. You seek to further demonstrate the impact of the risk that you were talking about a short while ago.
Sorry, just make sure I'm not. Are we talking about RMY 75 now? Yes. Actually, use the terms the impact of risk. That wouldn't be the right way I would describe it. Is basically to actually show. This is just a document which I wanted to point to, which actually indicated a risk at the system level, not by assuming the Texas bus instead of our own. And again, let me open that. It's a 34-page document, so I'm certainly not going to traverse it at all. I think I just need to point at the first page. Maybe just to anyway. It's as we can see at the top, it is a Thompson CSF to Texas document. Its authenticity arises from it being supplied to me by the Department of Defense, jointly with Arms Corps in its PIA response to me. It's clearly in respect of the South African Corvette Citron, and slightly offensively to me, they refer to the functional specification for the Texas bus as in the context of the information management system segment. As far as I'm concerned, the IMS was a C squared R squared offering, and there one was the Diacerto data bus offering. But if I may say what I meant by risk, if we can see the date of this document, it's dated in a place called let me say this in English, St. Cloud, June the 22nd of 1999. Now, as far as I know, this is the very first iteration or instance of this document. It's called a preliminary functional specification. In fact, indeed, where I need to refer to the next page, there's there's a record of revisions. That's what we do in the industry. We record changes in terms of baseline management and configuration control, and they refer to the date of it being the 22nd of June 99, and it being the initial revision. It indicates the two authors of that. I think one of those authors was the visitor to South Africa 3 weeks before, which clearly initiated them writing their first specification. So if I may say, if we have to just juxtaposed the risk constituted to the combat suite, to ADS themselves, Thompson, in a system that could only be specified for the first time at this late stage on 22nd of June, compared to the IMS, which had been formally baselined. Its first specification probably came out in 93, and it had a baseline specification that had probably existed at this stage for probably 4 or 5 years. So I think that is a reasonable indication of the technical basis, where I can say that there were indeed more risks, technical risks regarding the Thompson, the Texas Diacerto databus than our own one.
You continue with the thesis on relating to further observations regarding the price manipulation. In your discussion of the matter at paragraphs 376, 377 up to 378 of your statement, and with that you refer to your DTI 0443, our RMY 76, which is at page 1427 for purposes of the record.
I was just trying to follow. Are we talking about RMY 76?
That's right. This is all part of your discussion on further observation on price manipulation.
Yes, hopefully everybody will be pleased to know that this is a matter that we traversed before a day or two ago. I had to bring up the document in that particular context, and as I said, I elected to address the document at that stage while it was open. Of course, I indicated it here because if I needed to, I would be able to find it quickly. But from what I can see is that certainly up to 378 we've actually traversed before, and we don't really need to traverse it again.
That takes us then to the handwritten notes that you referred to at RMY 77, which is your DT1 0438. That is at our page 1432, and your comments regarding your DT1 0483, our RMY 78, which starts at page 1433, dealing with the combat suite total costs.
Yes, again, this is something that doesn't have to be traversed in excruciating detail, but it is a certain thing I'm looking for here is a handwritten document, obviously confirmatory notes regarding the pricing that was recorded at a briefing on the pricing from the best and final offer given by the GFC and ADS on the 24th of May. We've discussed that in some detail, but certainly it does record where I've got some of this information from. It's also a document that was I received under PIA. There's something, I don't need to discuss the details, I think we discussed it enough. At point 9, NAV offer still ADSs, 22 from 25 million. I said this was strange after the competitive, oh yes, because C squared, R squared quote as May 98. Those were the prevailing baseline financial conditions, and not December 98. I have discussed that with before, but it was based on that minor detail that they still were excluding us at this stage 6 weeks later, based on a simple thing called rate of exchange. It's fairly inexplicable for me. Important is the point 16. I'm still on the first page. Goes to another slight, a tiny bit of information regarding the surface-to-surface missile. Again, it refers to 4 options from Aerospatiale. There's something crossed out there to be provided. Basic option on offer. I think the word basic option is important. Probably mean the most inexpensive option, which would be important in the context of my complex theory. But as important, we were talked about the up and down price. Clearly, on the 24th of May, this indicates the combat suite price of 2.964 billion, and that proves my point that somehow 350 million odd had to be removed to get down to 2.599. In fact, maybe I'm actually, yeah. In fact, the offered price I remember we talked about was 2.634. That was for the special offer, bargain basement price from the mother company. So there was a not quite 350 million, but there was a slightly more than 300 million rand price somehow was arrived at to get down to the 2.6, and possibly the removal of the surface-to-surface missile ammunition was a major contributor there. But again, at this stage, the price of the total Corvette was 6.7 billion rand, and yet we know that it was signed at 6.873. So, so there were still interesting things going on with prices at this stage, despite what Chippy said is we do not interrogate the price of a preferred supplier's best and final offer.
Your document 0483, our RMY 78, which is at 1433, makes reference to combat suite total cost, and it does so through various tables and schedules.
Yes, because I took an oath to tell the whole truth. It was important to me to include this document for what it's worth. I'm not quite sure what it means or exactly its relevance in time, but it is a document that indicates the price of ammunition and a price of 180 million, 180.6 million as a foreign amount, and there's a local amount as well. But for what I've seen is that 180 million, 180.6 million seems to tie up with that 180 million in that previous price diagram that we showed. But of course, I'm showing this because something else might be relevant that I can't quite make head or tail of.
In your paragraph 380, you mentioned that, and this is something that I think we have traversed earlier on in your evidence, that the confidence of Thompson CFF seems to have been increasing during the time of negotiations. And what do you attribute to this?
I'm sorry. I was listening to a sort of a statement, and I think I may have heard of a question. Could you just repeat your question again?
I say in paragraph 380, you, I think, note or observe the increasing confidence of Thompson CSF in securing the combat suite contract, and I ask what leads you to be surprised by this increase in confidence of this company?
Well, there's certainly two documents. Well, a couple we've just alluded to the one where they record the 2.2 price, and we are going to come to at least two where the price was indicated as 2.3. So obviously there was a certain increase of confidence there, and then those figures of 2.3 being changed to either 2.6 or 2.7. So normally when one's expected price goes up, that also has a concomitant increase of one's confidence of securing the thing at that price.
And this increasing confidence, the theme seems to be taken further after you've discussed this price fluctuation, and you mention in 382 that this increased confidence coupled with Thompson CSF's illicit support base with high political level may have had effect in how they dealt with the contract.
I can be pretty confident about making that about that statement, because if it was true that there was a ceiling, a cabinet-approved price ceiling of 1.47, or adjusted upwards to 1.9, and they were allowed to get a contract of 2.6, there must have been some kind of high-level support for allowing. It's normal when cabinet sets a ceiling price for something, then there have to be something fairly extraordinary to allow a 700 million rand price increase on the combat suite, and a 873 million rand increase on the price of the Corvette. But of course, the 700 million rand on the combat suite is the absolute lion's share of that total increase. Then, of course, juxtapositioning with that, with the affordability report. Now, as far as I know, and part of the sensitivity of that affordability report in these proceedings, as far as my understanding is that it was a document produced for the cabinet, and that's why it's first of all why it's sensitive, and secondly why I haven't referred to it by means of reference. But the very fact that there was a figure of 2.6 billion in the affordability report must mean that there was something happening at that level to allow the price to increase to 2.6, especially without that last final furlong of negotiating the price downwards from 2.3 downwards instead of 2.3 upwards.
I'm still Advocate Siveko. Can we try as far as we can to avoid repeating the evidence? Area that we have touched, please let's not do it twice, thrice, because that doesn't help us much.
We'll do so, Chair. You have already dealt with the issue of the reduction in the expectations of the combat suite while there was the movement in price earlier in your evidence. Is that right? This appears at the end of 382.
Yes, that's correct.
And in your paragraph 383, you then seek to deal with what the project manager the views expressed by the project officer and project manager regarding this issue on 6 May 1999. Is this something that we have traversed as well?
Yes, we have traversed it before, what I've said, but I've specifically referred to the terms reductions of the scope of supply in terms of quantity or performance, which is quality. And I've quoted that particular point out of the document RMY 78, and I don't think I've traversed that before. I don't think I need to, but that is the documentary origin of that particular point I wanted to make about substantial reductions of the expected scope of supply and the concomitant price.
We have also dealt with the price, the total price that was finally arrived at, including risk and provision of all other amounts with regard to the combat suite. Is there anything else you wish to add?
Are we still coming to paragraph my 384 and its reference document, or?
That's the paragraph I was at, but it does appear that during the discussion of the evidence, these are the issues that you traversed.
Yes, this is a document. As we can see, it's got a complete different number. This is a document that was produced to me by the Commission from Arms Corps, and I just want to refer to a few things in there which are critically important to the points that I have made and will still be making.
That would be your PCB document 1999-0428, our RMY 80 at page 41445. That's
correct. My PDF just shows that I have 5 quick points to make, and if I may go through them, it's a 19-point document, so it will mean getting onto the right page. I'll do that while you can refer to the correct page in the evidence bundle.
What paragraph in that document would you like to refer to?
I want to go down to the 7th page. It is at the top. In fact, it is Appendix A to the minutes of the Project Control Board meeting, and basically, I think it looks like certainly a report of the project officer or the project team to the Project Control Board. It's got Appendix A written right at the top.
It's our page 1451. Yeah, is there anything you want to refer to on that page 1451?
On the page, the first point I just want to, for emphasis in this context, is something I've mentioned before, but here's a documentary record of it. Starts with price discussions, negotiations commencing in February 99 with a combat suite price of 3,9. Of course, it had to get down to 2,6. And the next point I want to mention, as it says, substantial reduction in prices now a result of, and records some of those mechanisms used to get that price down. But the important one I would like to refer to, one says substantial reductions in scope of supply and performance, but essential combat capabilities and local combat industry maintained. And then EG is obviously, okay, reduce SSM stock to minimum required, with the important point here is lease/purchase option. Okay, now That is an indicator, just as that some kind of mechanism, other than an outright purchase, was at least considered. I don't know, because the real evidence has been hidden from me. But I've been building up to this. This is more of the build-up, but at least one of the options of those four that we've talked about was a lease/purchase option. I don't think that this means a lease or purchase option. It is a lease option. That also ties together with the ADS document, which says removal of the ammunition.
Is there any other issue you need to address with regard to this document regarding the combat suite?
Yes. It's on my page 8, about 8 lines above the stamp that says Defence Intelligence Declassified.
That is page 1452 for the record. There is something that deals with increase in cost of combat management system.
The very, very substantial price increase, as it refers to here. The reasons for the increase of the cost, obviously from the cabinet approved the amount. One of the reasons is the increase in cost of the combat management system, from rudimentary high-risk local system to capable low-risk TAVI-TAC based system. Now that was the 95 million. I cannot believe it can be that high risk. It was developed for the Strikecraft. But more interestingly, the next point down, the price now of the combat suite increasing because of a more complex, more expensive architecture due to the new CMS. Now, of course, that involves the IMS. So it just seems to be incongruent, or the reasoning about the IMS contributing to the increase, but now we've got a CMS of 350 odd million, not only contributing to the price in its own on its own, but it's also contributing to a more complex and more expensive architecture due to the CMS. And if I may say, a more complex has to also mean higher risk.
And that is all you need to do within this document.
The next point is my page 9. It's a point I've been making about the inexplicable jump of price from 2,3 to 2,6. As the project officer advises the project control board, there is a recordal of this. Let's start at the top of page, my page 9 has got an A-3, so it's obviously the third page in Annexure A and the 9th page in this document.
That's 1453 for the record.
Okay, we'll go to the second solid bullet point there. It says here, combat suite price now approximately 2,3 billion or 2,300 million. Underneath that says program cost today. Ship platform, 3,700 million. Combat suite, 2,300 million. Adding on project management of 100 million means a total of 6,100 million. That is just 99 million rand more than the cabinet approved Corvette price of 6,001. As the project officer says, and this is very, very fundamental to my evidence at least, he says final price negotiations commence the 3rd of May 99. Estimate can negotiate another 3 to 5% off the ship platform, so that's bringing it down by 120 to 200 million. On the combat suite, can reduce combat suite an estimated another 100 million after negotiations with GFC ADS commencing 3rd of May 99. 60 million rand off current ADS price of 70%, especially, as I've alluded to before, in their own view, especially inflated program management, as I mentioned, that was of several hundreds of millions. Another cost saving of 40 million if the state provides program management assistance. And therefore, what's important, the project officer reports. Therefore, I can report that the Corvette is within goal of cabinet-approved 6,001 million rand, 6,001 billion. And the point I've been trying to make is it's inexplicable of how the combat suite price here of 2.3 billion with a possibility of being negotiated downwards by at least another 100 million and even more if they want to get down to 6 billion, how it could have suddenly jumped to 2.6 billion without any indication on the records that I've got, except that the affordability report indicated an acceptable price of 2.6, which that is bald. But anyway, here is a very fundamental document of how the 2.6 was arrived at, and in my context, I know it's circumstantial. I know it doesn't prove the point, but well, beyond a reasonable doubt, but I have no onus on me to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. But what I can, on the simple written record, what I can prove is at this stage the price was much lower, 300 million rand lower than the final price.
Now, having dealt with that aspect, you deal with another PCB meeting that was shared by GP Sheikh, dealing with exactly the same price, relating to the 2.6 billion rand of the combat suite. This you deal with at paragraph 386 of your statement, and the PCB meeting minute of 1999-05-27 is at RMY 81, page 1464. Is there anything you need to add there?
Yes, I've just got 2 points. I've got a bunch, but I'm going to leave out most of them because we've traversed most of them. There are just 2 that I think are relevant in what I've been saying here. And remember, this is a documentary record now, provided by the Commission to me and from ADS, not ADS, I think Arms Corps to the Commission, subsequent to my discovery on the 5th of March last year. The point I want to make, I'll click on my PDF here, and I'll go down to page 10 of 22.
That document talks about the surface-to-surface missile evaluation. Is that it? At page 1473.
Yes, we have traversed this before, but in context of what I've just been talking about, this again reminds us of the cost of the surface missile, including 17 missiles of 396 million, in the context of the lease/purchase option, in the context of the removal of ammunitions. It is relevant in that context. The next point I want to make is I've been referring to the affordability report, and that is traversed in the minutes itself, which is my page 3.
That would be our page 1466. What paragraph are you referring to specifically?
Okay, here it's the third last paragraph. It's a paragraph something A, titled Best and Final Offer. In the middle of that of that paragraph, and not to be accused of cherry picking, records the project officer, Project Citron, says that he believes that the combat suite price could be reduced to less than 2.6 billion. We've just gone down to 2.3 billion, and that is definitely less than 2.6. But the last sentence of that paragraph is the more important one. It says the chairperson, now this is Chippy Sheikh, the person who has recused himself from combat suite discussions, records that indicated that the total price of 6.694 billion was set aside by the Department of Finance and the affordability study documents presented to the Cabinet Subcommittee, and a combat suite price of 2.6 billion was indicated in the affordability documents. I'm afraid to say there seems to be no other evidence that I have that reasonably support that position.
In your next paragraph, you deal with the expectations that were held by Thompson CSF regarding the final price of the combat suite. And with that, you make reference to your DT 0432, our RMY 82, which starts at page 1486.
Yes, I've talked about this before, but here is the documentary proof. I think that I have explained this. This amount is that the French were fairly, well, certainly knowledgeable that the prices that were in that sort of 2.3 billion rand bracket. We've just traversed that in the Project Control Board minutes, or at least Annexure A thereof. But in a document from Alain Tetard, facsimile.
Could you just, for purposes of the record, identify what RMY 82 is and how it came into your possession?
Again, if we look at, I'm looking at a landscape version of it, a tabular format, but on the left-hand side of it, there is a number there, 78088481, which also means it's out of the series relating to the Shabir Sheikh trial matter.
You can then deal with the relevant section, having in mind the terms of the ruling yesterday.
Yes, indeed. If I just go down to the fourth page there, I haven't even hidden the top pages, but the fourth page is the first relevant page. Again, it's another fax from Alain Tetard, dated the 17th of May.
For the record, that is page 1489. You can proceed.
Okay, it is to his counterparts, or let's say colleagues in Thompson CSF in Paris. Again, of course, it's a fairly sensitive document because it all relates around money and income and profits and things, or related to profits. That's why it's an encrypted fax. And the first page refers to country South Africa, and main programs expected in the next 10 years. And the very first program is referred to as the Naval Combat Systems for the Corvettes. It's got the date of implementation and a little bit of a how can one call that, a minor Gantt chart. And anyway, as I've said, the amount that was being recorded as income for the group and the Thompson units involved are NCS, Naval Combat Systems, and ADS as 2.3 billion. Yet by this, suddenly by the time this document had been seized at least, it had been, the 2.3 had been scratched out and replaced by 2.6. I think that just shows the sudden and fairly unexpected windfall that was about to happen between 2.3 and 2.6.
And then with regard to the same aspect, you make certain observations about notes made by Pierre Moineau, who was the ADS negotiator of the combat suite. And with that, you refer us to your DT 0407 and our RMY 83, which starts at page 1491. And perhaps before you start with your evidence with regard to this document, please identify what it is and how it came to your possession.
Okay, it's certainly a recordal of a note made by Pierre Moineau, as you correctly say. As far as I can, I'm not a handwriting expert, but I recognize this seems to be his handwriting. It might have come out of one of his diaries, I can't be absolutely sure, but it's dated the 16th of April 1999, which precedes the best and final offer by 3 or 4 weeks. It's got a number starting with a 7-8, which also shows that it came out the same series of documents out of the should be a shake trial. It's all written in French, and an official also show that it came out of the trial. It is officially translated from French into English, as indicated by the signature and stamp of the sworn translator of the Supreme Court of South Africa. That was done for the court purposes in that instance.
Specifically what it is that you want to refer to in this document?
Okay, I think possibly I could use the French version there. Right, there's an asterisk under the name Barbara. It says estimating 2.7 gigafrancs, and something, okay, Commerman, and underneath that is a 2.350 gigafrancs. Now, I suppose I really need to go to the English version here. Yes, the English version says estimated 2.7 billion francs on the basis of acceptance option by Commerman, and they've got a reference here to 2.350 francs, and it says there Commerman should give us the go-ahead on Monday or Tuesday. That's at least in terms of the best and final offer. I think I'm not going to certainly not analyze it, but if one has got sight of the price of the 35mm guns, the price of that, it wasn't. I don't think it was more than 100 million rand, but that doesn't explain the difference between the 2.35 billion and the 2.7. So again, I'm making the point that it seems to me that they were expecting something in the region of 2.35 billion, and suddenly information came their way in April that a price of 2.6, 2.7 billion francs. If I may say, this is not an analysis, but in those days a French franc and a rand was almost the same thing. So when I've been referring to rands, then it is to all intents and purposes similar to a French franc at the time.
What follows then is your discussion of the observation that you make, having regard to all these documents about the contacts, which also relate to the contacts by officials of Thompson, CSF, and some officials of the DOD. The disclosure of the price that your company had quoted for the ISM until and you make reference also to the evidence that you have referred to earlier on in the RMY 67 relating to this disclosure. But at 395, you deal with this in a different context through the, I think it's the Section 28 inquiry that was conducted with Mr. H.N. Marais. Do you recall that?
Yes, that's correct. I think we all be pleased to see that we've jumped to my page 97, so where the evidence has been similar. We've skipped over a whole lot, and we're making fairly good progress down to page 97.
Now, that document in your PDF is 0779, and it is our RMY 84. It starts at page 1494. Any specific passages you need to deal with there?
Yes, I don't have any bookmarks indicated here, so I have the document in front of me. I want to see if I have, I've got lots of, but anyway, I think there are things that are certainly relevant to the entire procedures, but I don't need to traverse any of them except for what I have recorded in my witness statement, and that is
what appears in your statement seems to be quoted from our page 1521. The original pagination of your document is 1551. It continues from there.
Yes, that's correct. What he says, and this, I need to cover evidence with evidence in this regard, regarding the disclosure of the IMS price to Thompson, in particular in this particular instance to Thompson de Texas, as Captain Marais said, and he was a participant at that meeting on the 3rd and 4th of June when the Thompson parties were invited to Cape Town, and they had a kind of a work group there. And he says there is a fourth reason, which is why I was consulting my notes and so on. I suspected unethical business practices of being exercised by ADS by in advance making the prices they have received from C squared R squared available to Thompson to Texas, prior to Thompson to Texas having to submit their quotation for the BAFO, best and final offer. The reason why I'm making that statement is I have overheard discussion between a person, Jean-Marc Ferrer, from Thompson CSF. Those individuals both employed Thompson de Salt, that's as quoted, or Thompson de Texas, and the conversation took place on 3rd June 99 Cape Town area. The conversation that was overheard took further, and during the tea break confronted them with the statement that was made by Jean-Marc Ferrer that they are offering their bus system at approximately 30% less than the C squared R squared bus, and that was made by that person. That statement could not have been made by De Texas unless they had visibility, advanced visibility to the C squared R squared data bus proposal.
Again, in this respect, you make reference to notes that were prepared by Pierre Monod on 16 April 1999 regarding the pricing.
That's correct. I think we've traversed that sufficiently.
Turning now to your paragraph 397, what is set out in your statement is covered in the record or the transcript of the Section 28 proceedings that you've just referred to right now regarding the visibility of C-squared, I-squared prices being made to Thompson's.
That's correct, yes.
At 398, you deal with the deselection of C-squared, I-squared. There's something that you've also dealt with, is that correct?
No, I haven't dealt with that yet.
Would you like to deal with it now?
Yes. As he says further under oath in his in the record in the transcript, he gets asked a question. I have to put that in perspective about, and we can go, if necessary, to the transcript itself, which I see I don't have recorded a page, but what he says in answer to a question is accurate perspective. At that stage, higher authority applied pressures to maximize or increase the French content. It was not specifically the navigation distribution system. It is mainly because of the actual perceived pressures applied to maximize the French content in the or to increase the French content of the combat suite.
You say this evidence by Mr. Marais accords with what you heard as an instruction that had been given to maximize the French content. Where did you hear that from?
To be honest, I actually can't quite remember exactly who I heard it from. It's a long time ago. It was, of course, something said. It wasn't something in a document. So I can't refer to that. But it is well known that the French were hoping to actually win at least one major contract, specifically the main battle tank, a part of the SDPs. That got removed from the SDPs, and they were extremely disappointed. I can say that from my own knowledge. There's plenty of evidence of that, even in the press. In fact, I think in my discovered documents, there are various press stories about that. I've been advised by all my legal advisors not to refer to the press documents as necessarily useful for evidence, but regarding that main battle tank issue, that certainly is relevant and true. And what I was told at the time, in fact, surely from more than one source, is that there was some placation of the French in by effectively making all the non-South African parts of it French or mainly Thompson CSF. That's what I heard. And of course, independently of me, it looks like Captain Marais is stated under oath something very similar.
We have already dealt with the offers that were submitted by ADS for the IMS and in relation to the combat suite, which you referred to at your paragraph 403 of your statement. Is that correct?
I need to address my paragraph 400 now.
What issue do you need to deal with then?
It's not relating to the IMS, which we've discussing, but we've traversed the issue of the SMS before. I think I probably do come to that, but we certainly have addressed the SMS and the fact that ADS were allowed to decrease their price of the SMS the next day in a competitive situation. But while we had this document, Captain Nick Marais' evidence open in front of us. I wanted to bring the attention to what he says regarding the SMS pricing, specifically C squared R squared's pricing for the SMS being given to ADS, and Captain Murray avers as follows, and he says...
On what page of your document you're referring to the record?
I'm referring to item 400 of my witness statement.
Yes, I see that. That's a quotation you pick up from the transcript, is correct?
Yes, that is in the transcript. Unfortunately, I haven't recorded a page number there. But if we need to, I can find it with a highlight, but not a bookmark.
I guess during the adjournment you could assist us with that. But what does that say?
Mr. Murray says, it is the marketing department of every company's task to find out what your competitors are bidding. In this particular case, it was actually given to ADS because that was the communication channel. I don't know whether we're having another break, but I can find it if I'm given a couple of seconds.
Could you just try and find it quickly?
Advocate Sebeko, can I perhaps suggest that we take a 20 minutes tea adjournment to give the witness an opportunity of trying to get the document that he's trying to get?
I'm indebted to the chair.
Thank you. We'll take a tea adjournment for 20 minutes.